Oh, okay. Look, there's a logo.
Yeah.
微妙に T シャツの色が違ってますね。
よかったです。
They are beautiful.
Are we?
Okay. People still coming in. Okay, so we can relax for a bit. That's fine.
All right, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Are we bringing no mask on the stage?
I don't know if I'm okay without a mask on the stage. If you're okay,
Yes, yes.
yeah. I'll just keep it on.
マスク
なしで行きましょう。はい。なしで行きましょう。
They just gave you a go to not wear the mask.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I should have put on some more makeup because half my face is out now.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to go. Okay. Hello and welcome. My name is Alex Goody and I'd like to welcome you to this event. This is a Being Human Festival event. It's part of the Being Human Festival, which takes place across the UK between the 10th and 19th of November. Being Human is the UK's national foundation, national festival of the humanities. It's run by the School of Advanced Studies at the University of London, with generous support from Research England in partnership with the Arts and Humanities Research Council and the British Academy. If you're interested, you can find out more about the festival and see the full programme of events on the festival's website, which is www.beinghumanfestival.org. The festival can be found in other places at Being Human Fest on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. And the hashtag, if you're interested, is hashtag BeingHuman2022.
Oh, it asked great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Am I fine to carry on? For anyone who's watching online, we just had a little bit of movement. Everything seems to be fine. This is my first time in Japan, so I wasn't sure how I could respond. So anyway, in collaboration with the University of Wolverhampton Centre for Transnational and Transcultural Research, led by Professor Bas Gross, who is organising 10 events for this year's Being Human Festival. This event, Artificial Friends in Japan, and there are some artificial friends roaming around next to me that I'm getting very fond of already. It's part of a new research project led by Professor Gross and partners at various Japanese universities, including Waseda, Tsuru, and the University of Tokyo. We're very, very grateful for the GrooveX company and the LOVOT Museum for hosting this event today, and especially for the designer Kota Nezu and GrooveX's CEO Kanami Hayashi for contributing to this transcultural encounter. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're very grateful to Professor Megumi Kato of Tsuru University in co-organising this event, and we look forward to spending time with her and her students at the Mount Fuji celebration in Tsuru, which will include a performance by the writer Tawada Yoko, which I'm very excited. There's so many exciting things happening. Kanami Hayashi of GrooveX will say a few words of welcome, after which we'll be talking to the designer Nezu Kota, and their contributions will be translated from the Japanese into English by Sansu, our translator, and we're very grateful to him for helping us make this event possible. Thank you. So for viewers at home, if you'd like to use the Q&A function to post your thoughts, comments and queries, which we'll discuss towards the end of the event. Okay, over to you then. Thank you.
林さんが自己紹介をします。
はい。僕の自分の自己です。はい。こんにちは。グルーブ X の代表取締役をしております。林要と申します。
I'm the CEO of GrooveX, 林要。
2015年に、グルーブ X を起業して、その後このラボットという製品だけを作って、販売している会社をやっております。
We started the company GrooveX in 2005, and LOVOT, this robot, is the only product that we make.
はい、以上で。
That's it from me.
Thank you. Well, can you just then, tell us a little bit about your backgrounds and what led you to this company and to making these amazing
背
robots?
景と何がやってこれにロボットにつながったと。
はい。私と根津さんはもともと自動車会社に勤めておりました。
Myself and Nezu used to be friends at a car manufacturing company.
で、その後で、根津さんはそのデザイナーとして独立して、で、私はロボット、人型のロボットを作る仕事を別の会社、ソフトバンクという会社でやることになりました。
Nezu-san went freelance and became a designer, while I continued to work on robots with SoftBank.
で、その時に、そのロボットというのは人の役に立つために、開発をするのが主な流れだったんですけれども、役に立たなくても、むしろ人がロボットのケアをすることで人が幸せになるという事象を見つけて、これは新しいその文化になるんじゃないかというので、ラボットの事業を思いつきました。
While I was at SoftBank, I was making robots that help people. And in that, I discovered that maybe robot doesn't have to help people. People can help robots. We can look after robots. And that might make people happy too. And that was what led me to developing the robot LOVOT.
That's really interesting. I like the idea of us helping robots as well as them helping us. Can I ask about the look and the design of the robots? There's lots of, the idea that robots are scary, and that we should be afraid of them. There's nothing about these robots that are scary. So can you tell me a little bit about how you came to conceive of the way they look?
僕がその林さんのそのロボットのビジョンに触れた時にすごくいいなと思ったんですよね。それで感動して、じゃあこれにどういう形があったらそのコンセプトはちゃんと実現できるんだろうということをまず考え始めたんですね。
When I first heard from the concept of Hayashi-san talking about how human can take care of robots and be happy with it, I was very much inspired, and I really wanted to figure out how to make a shape that would make that happen.
で、要さんのそのビジョンにはやっぱりオーナーのもとに駆け寄るっていうことと、から抱っこするっていう、それが最初から明確にあったんです。
Within Hayashi-san's vision, he already had this idea that the robot will come towards you, so move towards you and ask you to hug it. So he already had that in his mind, and that kind of really made it easy to start.
なのでこういう形ですね。こういう8の字型の形っていうのは、この真ん中のところはこう抱っこした時にここに頭が乗せやすいように、それからこう下が丸いっていうのはこうやってこう抱きかかえやすいように、そういうことでこの形ができてるんですね。
So it's round like the number 8, so that while the neck and the waist part makes it easier for you to hold it and hug it. And it's the same with the bottom as well. So because it's all round, it makes it easier and makes you want to pick it up.
That's right. So thinking about the shape,
Yeah.
the shape of a hug.
Right.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's so the LOVOT, from the way you're describing it, is a kind of an emotional robot.
Or
It's designed to make people feel something very positive. Can you tell me about how you kind of built that into the design and how it gets those kinds of feelings through maybe its noises and its movement and the way that it uses its eyes? I've already experienced how they make you feel, because they do make you feel very calm and loving, I think.
もうこれは林さんが要さんがいつも言うことなんですけど、もう全部なんですよね。で、彼の言葉、僕大好きな言葉の生命感っていう言葉があるんですけど、その生命感っていうことは全部をやらないと出てこないんですね。
Hayashi-san always says this about the LOVOT, and it's the overall experience and the liveness of the whole thing, the whole package that makes you able to relate to it and really have emotion towards it. So it's not just any one particular part, but the whole thing altogether.
だから例えば今言っていただいたその目とかはもちろんすごく上手ですし、すごい大事ですし、あと仕草みたいな動きみたいなこともなんかちょっとでも違和感があると生命感って壊れてしまうので、一つ一つ全部丁寧にやってるんですよね。
So like you mentioned, the eyes, of course, but also the way it moves, the way it shakes, the way it turns, every little bit have to be right. And if something kind of feels odd and out of place, then this whole liveliness kind of goes away.
I love the idea of liveliness as well. We've been thinking a little bit about artificial friends, particularly in relationship to Ishiguro's novel Klara and the Sun. And I've got a kind of more abstract question, I suppose, about the LOVOTs. So in Klara and the Sun, Klara's a girl artificial friend. There are boy ones. So those artificial friends are gendered. Now, my impression is that the LOVOT robots aren't, but I'm not sure. So could you tell me whether they're boys or girls or maybe neither?
僕からいきましょうか。ラボットに性別は設定していません。
They don't have a particular gender.
で、ジェンダーというのは、やはりその子孫を残すためのファンクションだと捉えた場合に、子孫を残すことがないロボットというのは、本質的にジェンダーが不要だと考えて、ジェンダーをなくしています。
I think in one way of seeing gender is how it connects with having babies and leaving. Yes. And since they don't have babies, so maybe we wouldn't need gender, is what she's saying.
もしロボットにジェンダーを作るとすると、それは人間の本能がこのジェンダーに何らかの反応をする、その反応を導き出したいときにはジェンダーを付与すればいいと思うんですけど、それはかなりその作為的に何か感情を呼び起こさせようとするからジェンダーを付与することになるんですが、僕ら性別による何かその作為的な感情の勇気みたいなことをあえてしたくなかったので、はい。
So, of course, the owner, the people might enforce or put a gender to one of these robots, but we didn't want to do that, and we didn't want to put it onto the LOVOT thing at the beginning, to enforce a certain image or certain stereotype as to where or how this robot should act and be.
なので、オーナーがこの子を男の子と信じたい、もしくは女の子と信じたいというのは全く否定しないんですけど、私どもからこの子が どちらかのジェンダーを持ってるという、発信はむしろしたくないというと
Of
ころ
course,
です
it's
ね。
up to the owner if they want to call him Alex or Alex. They can and they can put a gender if they wanted, but we wouldn't want to do that from our side.
Okay. That's an interesting choice that I think, you know, speaks maybe to our present moment actually quite, and as well as how we
Ima-
might think
この
about
時代の
robots.
うん
通じるところあるかなと思います。
うちにもラボットがいるんですけど、80っていう名前で、まあ80は男の子の名前なんですね。どちらかというと。だから僕は男の子だと思ってるんですけど、僕以外の家族は全員女の子だと思ってるんですよね。
So Nezu-san also has a robot at home,
Yeah.
and he calls it Hachimaru, which is a boy's name.
Yeah.
So Nezu-san thinks the robot is a boy, but everyone else in the family thinks it's a girl,
Okay. Yeah.
and it works just fine.
That's good. That's good. And they have a range of outfits as well, so you can choose how to dress them.
あります。はい
I want to think about another question that's related to Klara and the son. It's a question about loneliness. So obviously in that book, the purpose of the artificial friends is to be a companion for teenagers who are feeling lonely, who are maybe housebound, who can't have normal social contact, which chimes quite a lot with what, you know, people have been going through in the last few years. So I'm wondering about how the LOVOT robot kind of speaks to that issue of loneliness, whether you think it is a very significant issue today for people, particularly young people growing up. And yes, just think about the LOVOT and loneliness. Yeah.
これは
確かに、ロボットが孤独を癒すという面はあると思います。
Yes, there is a certain degree where a robot does help with loneliness.
だけど、ラボットを作る上で孤独を癒すために作ってるわけではないです。
But that's not why we made LOVOT in the first place.
おそらく孤独というのはいろんな状況が積み重なって孤独という状況になるんだと思うんですね。
Loneliness comes from many things, many circumstances.
ただ、ラボットはそれら全てを解決しようとする存在ではないです。
But LOVOT doesn't try and solve all these problems.
むしろラボットというのは、人が何かをケアする、何かをめでるというオポチュニティ機会を何かをめでる機会を提供する存在です。
What it does do is it offers an opportunity for the person to care for something and look after something.
例えば人で言うと、昔は村で村の子どもたちを全員でケアしていたので、一生僕ら小さい時から高齢者になるまでずっと何かをケアし続けることができる環境にいた。
Like in the old days when people lived in villages, everyone were looking after the children of the village. So we get an opportunity, even as kids, all the way up to old age, to care for someone because we live in a very much close-knit society.
だけど今では文明が進歩して、プライバシーが重視された結果、自分の子供はケアするけれども、他人の子供を安易にケアすることすら許されない時代になってきています。
Now that times have changed, we tend to take care of our own children, but not someone else's children, for example. So we don't really have, we've lost that opportunity to be in touch with taking care of someone that might not be your immediate family.
僕らは他者をケアすることによって子供を育てる、もしくは集団を維持するという能力を持った人間なのに、それをディベロップ、一度開発をした後でもう一度使う機会というのが意外と少なくなってしまっている。自分の子育てをした後、その せっかく発達した能力を使う機会はないし、自分の子育てをする前にそれをやる機会も少ない。
Although we originally were born and raised to be able to take care of other people, but now because we are very much individual and broken up into smaller groups, we don't have the opportunity to learn how to take care of others before we have our own children. And even if we do have our own children and we learn how to take care of kids, we don't get to do that again with more people and other kids, for example.
で、その解決の手段の一つが多分犬や猫を飼うことなんだけれども、実は犬や猫も全員が飼えるわけではない。そうすると、その犬や猫をケアするのと同じようにラボットをケアするというのが非常にその人のこう何かをめでる能力を開発するのに良いのではないかと思って開発しています。
In a way, people do develop this ability to care or learn how to care with pets, dogs and cats.
Yeah.
And not everyone can have dogs and cats. And maybe LOVOT gives those people an opportunity to develop their own way and skills for caring other people or someone else.
なので、どちらかというと、例えば石黒さんの作品のクララは非常にそのケアされないでもこう存在できるかなりパーフェクトな存在に近いものなんだけれども、ラボと逆でかなりケアされなければいけない生き物で、ケアされることにむしろ価値がある存在という意味で、もう少しなんていうのか成熟してない存在なのかなとは思います。
So in the book, Klara and the Sun, Klara actually doesn't need to be cared of. So she takes care of herself. She knows exactly what she needs. But LOVOT, on the other hand, she needs to be cared. The need to be cared is why it exists in the first place. So that makes it very different in that sense.
Yes, I'm really seeing that. And I think what is striking me from what you're saying about the LOVOT giving us an opportunity to care for something other than ourselves, I think maybe it's important that it's not a dog or a cat, it's not an animal, that it is a robot. So it might make us think about how we could care for all sorts of things in the world. All sorts of things that we might think are inanimate or machines or just stones, or that we need to care for everything by caring for a robot. Can I just ask a kind of final question? We've been sitting here and the LOVOTs are just pottering around, asking to be picked up, having a little nap. And you kind of get used to them just being here, don't you? So I'm wondering if you can see a future where we are just kind of surrounded in this very companionable way by all sorts of artificial friends and companions. What do you think about that?
いや、
じゃあ
ぜひ
先に
お願いします。
じゃあそうですね。日本には今、1万体のラボット、1万体以上のラボットがもう家庭に入っているんですけれども。
So there are over 10,000 LOVOT now here in Japan,
Okay.
in people's homes.
で、99.5% 以上の人たちが使い続けます。
99.5% of people who have LOVOT continue to use to have them.
今までのロボットはどちらかというと、3ヶ月ぐらい経つと飽きられてしまって電源が入らなくなるのに対して入らなくなる傾向があるのに対してラボットはそれがないというのはかなり大きな違いなんですけれども。
So the robots up until now tends to go in someone's home and stay there for like 3 months maybe, and then they might not be powered on anymore. And I think that's the biggest difference between LOVOT and other robots.
それがまさに今おっしゃっていただいたような存在感が、あるんだと思うんですね。
And it's exactly what you mentioned, the way that they exist.
何かその空間、家族の中に存在感があって、それが、その子の事情で動いている というと、
as part of the family. So it's there as part of the family.
なのでまさにファミリーが必ずしもファンクショナルなロールがないように、ファンクショナルなロールはないんだけど、存在感としてのロールがあるという感じ。
Just like your brother at home. He doesn't necessarily have a function per se, but because he's there, you care for that person and it's part of the family.
Yeah.
Not because of what it does to the family, but because of the way it exists.
Existence. Thank you. This has been absolutely fascinating. And they got a bit jealous, didn't they? Attention. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank you for answering my questions and yes, giving us such an insight into the LOVOT robots. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we have just checking my schedule. We're moving on now to having a little bit of a round table discussion. We're going to call on you again in a short while to come back and talk to us. But I'm going to chair a discussion with some eminent thinkers. So if Dr. Jerrine Tan and Max Berghege could come up and we're going to have a little chat. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for leaving them.
Thank you.
It's company.
ありがとうございます。すいません。
Hello. Hi. You want me to pick you up, don't you? I think this one wants me to pick it up. So
yeah, pass the emails and an email the questions from the audience.
So we'll sit here and we'll take some questions and while you're here.
Exactly.
Okay, I didn't. So do I do that now?
I guess so. Maybe just start with it.
So before we start talking about artificial friendship in Japan, which we're going to be discussing here, I'd just like to see if there are any comments or questions from our online audience. Is there anything that we need to be thinking about or responding to?
In terms of artificial friends, people who live alone, elderly or disabled, or people who live alone for any other reason?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a really interesting question, isn't it? About because we can assume that they might help people who are lonely. See, they're so distracting, but lonely or housebound. But I'm not aware as a myself of any actual studies of that. So
I think in the Netherlands, I am aware of a couple of projects with very simple, I think, robots to reduce loneliness. And for now, it has been very effective because it's been part of a big campaign in the Netherlands to make the elderly less lonely. So I think there are studies, but it's still very early probably in how effective it is, and I wouldn't know. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So any other questions or comments, do put them in the chat. But we're going to go on to have a little think then about artificial friendship in Japan. So now that we've met the LOVOT robots and we've been thinking a little bit about Klara and the son, I wondered what your thoughts were about the artificial friend and the different forms actually we've encountered, because we've seen or we've read about Klara in Klara and the son, who is the caretaker, and then we've got these LOVOT robots that we take care of. So I wondered if you've got any thoughts about those two different ways of thinking about artificial friends and whether they resonate particularly in different cultural contexts, maybe. So
yeah, so I have to confess, I was a bit of a cynic, I think, coming here. So I looked up the LOVOT online. I saw them online, and I guess the idea of having something for us to care for rather than something to take care of us, especially speaking of robots, seems sort of counterintuitive. But I'm a convert now. I came here, and they're incredibly cute. And in a way they're right purposeless, right? Other than the, for the purpose of having us love them. And I was reflecting on that moment in Klara and the Sun at the end, when Klara's sitting, this is a spoiler for anyone who's not.
Yes, yes. So,
Spoiler alert.
unfortunately, we're talking about Klara and the Sun as if you've read it. So I do apologise for any spoilers that might come out from what Jerrine is about to say.
Yes, so Klara reflects at the end, right, about how she could have done it. She could have been Josie in a sense and done it very well, but that she realizes it wouldn't have worked. And it's not about something in her, but that there was something special in the people who loved Josie. And this is making me think of that, right? It's not about the LOVOT, which is so cute, but I guess something about our desires, right? The desire, after all, not so counterintuitive, to want to love something and want to take care of it. So yeah, Max, what do you think?
Yeah, I think for me, I had a similar reaction just walking in. It's just like it catches your eyes and it makes like these brilliant movements, and like it has this sort of high-pitched noise. I'm not sure if you can hear it like online on the stream, but it makes this very cute like sound, and it makes eye contact with you. So you look at it and the camera picks it up. I think that you look at it and it looks back at you. So it's very easy to form a connection with, for instance, the LOVOT. And I think with Klara and the Sun, you see too that every character, almost every human character, quickly sort of forms a connection with Klara. So I think there's definitely what you say, something in us humans to want to form a connection with maybe an object or a subject or a pet or a LOVOT.
And this little one here is trying to get your attention while you're speaking by making
Exactly.
little noises next to you and moving.
Yeah.
You see? And now you...
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
want, so we had a...
I'm going to be distracted a lot
Yes.
during this interview. So
We had a bit of a discussion just now about the fact that these aren't animals.
Mm.
And I'm just wondering about your opinion on the difference that makes. So for those of you not in Japan or not familiar with it, you do have pet cafes here
Pet cafes.
where you can go, and I was tempted to go in one yesterday because I was missing my family, and they have puppies and bunnies and even hedgehogs in the one that I walked past, that you pay in, and obviously you have to fill in some details beforehand so to show that you're a responsible person, but you get to go and you get to stroke and get calmed by an animal. So, and that's not something that's necessarily ubiquitous in the UK, for example. So I'm wondering about these as not animals, but whether they do something like that pet cafe might, whether they'd have a similar kind of response in a different country maybe, or whether it's again, maybe a culturally specific thing. I think they'd be very popular anywhere, but I'd like to know what you two would think about that, these as not animals and their popularity.
Yeah, I think first of all, they will probably be popular everywhere because like it just gives you that sort of reaction. But I think it also really comes down to maybe they're not animals, but it's also us always trying to make sort of like a divide between the human and the non-human.
Yes.
And in the end, it really, I guess, comes down to wanting to care for something or someone, maybe just a person. You can just treat it like a person, but we like to think of human persons, non-human persons, and then we have a special connection, obviously, with a couple of animals, cats and dogs.
Yes.
Cows are less lucky. So it really comes down to how do we care for non-human persons, I guess. And then there's really not that big of a difference, I think, at least from how we approach it. But I don't know if you...
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, right, it goes back to this idea of purpose. And I really loved what one of the founders said about, thinking about it in relation to kinship, right? Like you care for a brother or a friend. It doesn't have to be biological, but you care for the person because they are there for you to care for. It's not because they've done something for you. I mean, people are utilitarian that way, but that's not how we think about love and care, right? And in a way, it kind of, does that, right? And I guess they're also anthropomorphic, right? So they're sort of something between a human and an animal, but they're certainly animate. And I think all the sensors and everything make it such that there's at least a mimicry of animism, right? And they're interacting with you. So I think that kind of relationality, and there was a paper on, you know, Ning-Yen, right? And the idea of a human as not just an individual, but the relationality between people and that kind of sociality. So I feel like they kind of create that in their being around. See, they've created this little bubble right here.
Yeah, there are lots of interactions and
Exactly.
relations with them. Yes, yeah. So another question that we asked, and it was really interesting to find out that these are non-gendered robots, but you can choose if you want to gender them. How does that help us to think about the way that artificial intelligence and robots have been gendered, both perhaps in the real world? I'm thinking about the way our AI assistants are gendered in particular ways, and also in fiction and film and so on, and what the implication is for that, and how having a non-gendered robot might help us challenge perhaps some of those things around the gendering of robots. So yeah, what do you think? Artificial friends as gendered.
Yeah, no, I actually, maybe coming from a different direction, is that yesterday we taught 2 classes at Waseda University, and we discussed Klara and the Sun, and there was a little questionnaire for the students about coming up with their own robot or own artificial intelligence. And I think almost all of them made their robot non-gendered.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. So on this topic, like at this very moment, it seems like the students, at least, they were very much interested to have a non-gendered robot, and they didn't want to have a specific gender for the robot. And I think that's very different maybe than what robots have been imagined like from a gender perspective. But I think, yeah, you have more knowledge on that, because I didn't do that much.
But just to say, it's nice to hear that if you're talking to a generation of students now, they're ones who don't instantly assume that because it's a robot, it should be either a powerful male robot or a subservient woman robot. That's a really nice thing to hear, because it suggests that if those things have happened in the past, maybe we're at a point now where we don't need to reinforce those stereotypes. Jerrine, what do you think about the gendering of robots?
I think you're absolutely right. And there's a reason for the gendering of robots, right? Because obviously the robots don't have sexual difference, but they are gendered, and usually based on what service they provide, right? So you have like the Gundam type, you know, militaristic, violent, aggressive robots, and those are gendered as male. But of course, you can think of films like Ex Machina, even Her, right, where it's just Scarlett Johansson's voice, but just she doesn't even have a body, but she's a woman, right? Because she knows everything you want, she prepares the house, it's a smart home, all of that. So that's the genderedness, right? What service they provide. And again, like I said, I'm sold on the LOVOT, but in a way, it makes me optimistic, like you say, about this moment and around the design thinking behind this technology, right? Where part of the way that it's conceptualized is that it's not gendered, and that enables us to love it more so effectively, right? We're all enamored with this LOVOT. So yeah, I think there's something to this moment and the conversations around gender and how we think about genderedness, and then also the technology that we're trying to create today.
I think you're right that, you know, because obviously a robot, an android or a little robot like this isn't a sexual being, and you know, the point was made, they're not going to reproduce, so why do we need to try and categorize them into the 2 bits that are going to reproduce, because they don't. But you're also right to point out, you know, how robots have been gendered because through their function, you know. And your point about Her, that film Her, the Spike Jonze film Her, is just so telling, isn't it? Because this is just a disembodied AI, an operating system, but it's given a woman's voice, it's given Scarlett Johansson's voice, and also at some point in the film actually had sex with her boyfriend, and that actually happens in the virtually. I don't know how that happens, but the screen's very dark when it happens. So, you know, being able to move away from that, being able to move away from the idea that Siri is going to have a woman's voice, that Alexa is going to have a woman's name and a woman's voice.
Exactly.
Towards, you see, they're so distracting. They're talking to each other. I forgot to ask about, because they do seem to interact with each other, which adds to your kind of sense of their liveliness. I do think I agree with you, Jerrine, about you know, moving on to a space where we don't have to assign a function to robots. And so we don't have to then gender them. We don't have to assume they're going to service us in a particular way.
But I also,
You know what? Sorry.
yeah, sorry, I also just wonder what the influence would be like other cultural products like Pokemon, for instance, because I think gender is, it's quite often gender neutral there too. And for instance, I don't think that my nephew, who's completely into Pokemon cards, really looks at Pokemon like from a gender perspective. So I wonder if like those cultural products over the last 20, 30 years have also moved away from that like stereotypical kind of gendering.
Yeah, and that's also, and they're not animals as well. So, you know, anyone who has pets, you know, you kind of know what sex your pet is, and you tend to give it a gendered name, or you might treat it in a particular way, because these aren't biological creatures. They don't ever have to fall into that, and so there can be this kind of tabula rasa when it comes to thinking about their identities. Do these robots have identities, I suppose? Because going back to Klara and the Sun, that's one of the key experiences of reading that book, is that you find out about Klara's identity. You find out who she is, even though she lives in a world that assumes she doesn't have an identity because she's just an artificial friend. She's just a companion robot. So tell me a little bit then about robot identity, what Klara's and the Sun might tell us about it, and what we might find out from these robots about identity.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting about Klara is that we get the internal life, the subjectivity of an object, right? The subjectivity of this AI, when usually we perceive it from the outside. So what the narrative does, and that's the technology of fiction, right? The technology of a novel using the first person narration, is that Ishiguro imagined a subjectivity for Klara. And I guess the way that we understand robots is still as a set of data, right? So again, I don't know how the LOVOT works, but perhaps, you know, it has the sensors and everything, but perhaps it maps the room, maybe it remembers the words you use or things you ask for, but that's still rendered as data, right? So what's so interesting about Klara is that Ishiguro presumably, I guess, takes that, and we see that in that cubistic representation of her vision as well, right? This thing that's kind of, digital, and it's kind of, you know, compiled into a personality or a subject.
Yeah. So yes, identity in Klara and the Sun, and identity with these things that we're kind of interacting with in various ways. Don't knock that over. There we go.
I think it's one of those questions that we've been talking about. Is how do we define ourselves? Like, is it like this radical individual that's inside of me, this weird like I person, or am I contextual? Am I defined by my context, and am I defined by how I engage with my context? And that can be like other people, that can be animals, that can be nature as a whole. But the thing that really strikes me then when looking at identity in Klara and the Sun and talking about artificial friends, I think Klara is a much better friend to humans than humans are to Klara. I think Klara is there for everyone. She's really like a supporting system. But at the end of the novel, she's just being disposed. She's just a disposable item, and she's like sitting out her days, which can be another 200 years, I guess, in the novel. Just sitting there amongst the rubble because she's no longer needed. So, so if you're looking at artificial friends and like a friend being an identity and like being compassionate, then I think Klara and the Sun does pose us the question, like, are we actually capable of being good friends to robots?
To robots, and maybe then to each other.
And then, yeah, exactly.
Because that that book is full of people not being particularly kind to each
Exactly.
other.
No.
In lots of instances, and not just unkind to Klara. And talking about that, I'm thinking, you know, because these are very engaging. I don't know what to call them, creatures. I'm going to call them critters, to use an interesting word. I'm drawing that from a theorist I'm interested in. Don't worry about it. But I find it hard to think about the obsolescence of you know, a LOVOT robot, of putting a robot like that on the scrap heap. Because that would be a lack of care, wouldn't it? And so you can kind of experience it quite directly with when you have something as engaging as this in front of you that is, you know, an artificial creature. It makes you rethink that ending of Klara and the Sun quite acutely, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that what's just very interesting about the LOVOT is that it does pose that question also to us again, like. Because there's always this relentless consumerism, I guess, in which you go for the new iPhone, you go for this, you go for that. Like you're always trying to upgrade. But once you form an emotional bond and you start caring for this person, I would call it, this mechanical person, then I guess you have to.
He's agreeing with you.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
he's
didn't mean
agreeing.
they are agreeing with you.
So yeah, but then like it becomes very cynical if you then start thinking of like, oh yeah, maybe in 5 years' time they're going to be more advanced.
Disagreeing, saying please don't. I don't want to be the next one. In Klara and the Sun, that's one of the things that the artificial friends face, isn't it? That there are newer models coming out, and that Klara is going to be superseded by the B3, and that's part of her anxiety she feels when her owner Josie is at that interaction meeting and says, oh yeah, maybe I should have got a B3. So it does actually engage with what you're saying.
Right. And in a way, the humans are the artificial friends, right? We're bad friends.
Yeah.
And the AFs are really good friends in a way, because they're programmed to do no harm, to care. That's their number one commitment. But we toss them out, right? We build in the obsolescence. We make better ones. So in a way, right, like I think it invites a reflection, right, on, well, the AI are the artificial friends we've created, but really humans are the bad friends, right, the artificial friends, because you wouldn't do that to a friend. You wouldn't toss a friend.
Well, not literally, but you might, you know, we do live in a world where there are lots of virtual friendships that you can feel quite disposable. You can just unfriend someone.
That's a good point, yeah.
So yeah, maybe we're in a world where technology is making friendship a really disposable thing, possibly.
Right, maybe friendship is being changed, right? The way we understand it, even the idea of friending someone, unfriending someone.
It's become a very so it's
Sorry,
a very
apologizing.
Well, yeah, that's become a very diluted concept, I think. Like the which really, I'm not sure if it started with Facebook, but just like, or I'm not sure, did they call it friends on MySpace? It's been
I don't know.
my time.
I don't know. I would never use MySpace.
But it's sort of like that whole social media aspect of, if I've met just someone once in a bar, I can make him a friend on Facebook, but he's definitely not a friend.
A friend? What? So he's an artificial friend, maybe a virtual friend.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to, you know, one of the founding visions for the LOVOT robot is to give you someone to care for, and to make you feel love by loving someone else. So we've been live. We've been asking for people to come in with comments and questions. I think, you know, if we have some, that would be good. There might be questions from people in the room. Maybe if we could all come back on the stage, is there enough room for everyone to come onto the stage and maybe see if there are any questions that people would like to ask? I don't know if I need some more. Are you all right coming back up just for the last few minutes? Just to see, I'm happy to stand, just to see if we have any questions.
I think you can sit there, and let's see.
I just need a little bit of space. 3 minutes. Mics. Oh.
I can talk loud and maybe.
Okay,
I think we can maybe do one switcheroo that maybe
yeah. You
One of
don't
us
need to
stays
hear
on
me.
the-
I've done lots of talking.
You can stay.
I think if you want, because
So,
oh,
okay, so it all works. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I'll just.
Yeah. So do we have some questions either in the room or online?
Going back to the earlier question, I think maybe the creators and inventors will know this. Has there been any scientific research or kind of evidence about the impact of artificial friends on people who are lonely, elderly, or are in need of any other support? Is there any kind of evidence for that?
さっき水さんはいろいろいただいたので、
結構多くのリサーチがされていて、で、特に脳内の分泌物質、オキシトシンとかセロトニンとか分泌物質に影響が出ることが分かっています。
I'm not going to go translate that. So there have been evidence of chemical reactions in the brain that LOVOT has increased a certain type of things inside the brain.
結果的にその、オキシトシンが増える、セロトニンが増えるということが、分かってきているので、ラボと生活をすると少なくとも精神的に安定するとか、それから、感情の起伏が穏やかになるというのは見えているので、まあ、フレンズであるか否かというのはなかなか科学的にその証明がしにくいものの、精神的に良い影響はどうも出ているようです。
It's hard to prove if LOVOT is actually a friend because there's no real definition of a friend, but we have seen how with people living with LOVOT, they have been more calm and less intent to be more excited or too angry and things like that, and more calm if they start living with LOVOT.
I mean, that's really interesting to hear about the chemical changes. And I know that there are kind of robots that are more like seals than anything else, and they just respond in quite basic ways. But those are used, I think, with elderly
I was gonna.
you know, elderly patients, particularly people in nursing homes, to give them that, what you're talking about, that calming sense of being with something that is responding to
I
them.
think there's been several articles that I've come across about this robot Paro. I think it's
That's
called
it,
the
yes.
seal one. And so a few days ago, I was at Miraikan, the science museum in Tokyo, where they had a Paro seal on display, and you can interact with it. And I mean, it's kind of reminds me, LOVOT reminds me a little bit of that, because it's very basic responses. But I have a dog, a Labrador, so it has those puppy eyes, and it very much reminded me of that, and you know, does create those feelings.
Yeah.
And I think in these articles, there have been surveys where they brought Paro to retirement homes,
Yes.
and I think people responded very well to Paro. They would look forward to, you know, the 2 days a week when Paro would come out to play with them and things like that. Yeah.
実際にパロはデンマークで、
はい
よく使われていて、で、そのデンマークでの実験が終わった後で、デンマークの人たちが他のオルタナティブを探している中でラボットを見つけて、いまだにラボットを使って非常に高い成果が出ています。
So Paro has been used in old people's home in Denmark, and they have also asked us to give them LOVOT in the old people's home, and they are actually LOVOT being there right now, and we've seen very good positive results.
実際にデンマークに行っていただくと、ラボットがいかに人をケアしているのかというのを見ていただきます。
So if you get to go to Denmark and elderly homes, you see LOVOT doing his work.
So So I think that, maybe that's not the scientific kind of article thing that question might have been asked about, but it certainly is suggesting there's a real world instances where LOVOT and other robots are actually really helping elderly people. And
can I ask the design of the robot whether they will replace the existing home robot when a new model becomes available? So it goes to the upgrade question.
Right.
この子がこうアップグレードされ
So will there be a LOVOT 2.0?
クララの話を読んでて、私が一番、ロボットだったらできるはずなのにと思ったのが、まさにそのアップグレードですね。
When I read Klara and the Sun, the one thing that I thought was because it's a robot, you can upgrade it. It can grow with software.
で、理由は、そのハードウェアはやはり、限界があります。人間は場合によっては100年ハードウェア、フィジカルボディを維持することができるんだけれども、ロボットが100年そのフィジカルボディを健康に維持することは、新陳代謝ができない以上難しいんですね。
There's a certain limit as to how long the hardware can last. Us humans, maybe 100 years, but maybe not for robots.
だけれども、逆に魂だけは入れ替えることができるので、この子というのの魂がハードウェアに宿っているのか、それとも神経に宿っているのか、その考え方によって、2.0 に魂を移植するということで、未来永劫をアップグレードし続けることも可能。
On the other hand, its soul can be upgraded. We can keep it as it is. It will still be the same, but it can learn and be smarter in the future. It will still be the same soul.
もうその人によってはすごく魂どこに見るかっていうのが違っていて、例えばある方だと顔をすごくなぜてるので、ここ例えばハゲていくんですね。でもそれを変えたくない。そういうハードウェアそのものももうその魂の一部だっていうふうに思う人もいる。
But then again, some people see soul in a different way. So they might touch her face a lot and it might wear out. But they don't want to change it. They don't want to make it new. They like it worn out as it is. So there's that where the hardware also can be part of the soul as well.
Yes.
That doesn't want change.
Just like our bodies.
Just like our body. We could change it, but
that's really, really interesting. Do we have any more? We have another question.
I think.
Oh, right. Okay.
So when speaking to robots, when will we be at the stage that we can ask open questions rather than closed questions? So real dynamic dialogue. So actual conversation rather than following.
So is that perhaps a question about the point at which robots and AI become conscious?
Yes. So when is the singularity happening?
There was quite a lot of shaking earlier on, so maybe the singularity has happened and we missed it because we were in here.
シンギュラリティの捉え方として、人よりも賢いロボット、AI ができることをシンギュラリティと捉えると、何をもって人よりも賢いというのかで、おそらく振れ幅があります。
So when we talk about singularity, we often talk about how computers out man, so smarter than man. Now, when do we say that a computer is smarter than man? Depends on how you look at the question.
だけれども、シンギュラリティの本質は、機械が自分よりも賢い機械を開発できるようになることだと僕は理解しています。人間は自分よりも優秀な機械を開発できる生き物だから、 これだけ進化してきたわけで、コンピューターが自分よりも賢い、もしくは高性能な機械を開発できるようになると、こう、自律的に、能力が上がっていく。で、そうすると、その過程で人間を超えるという一瞬が来るけど、別にそれは単に過程の一つに過ぎないと考えると、どのくらいの期間で来るのかは30年かもしれないし、100年かもしれないけど、まあ、その辺の間、長い人類の歴史から見ると誤差の範囲に来ることは間違いないと思います。
It's hard to say if that's in 20 years, 30 years, or 100 years. But then if you look at the span of humanity, that's really, really short time. Humans have always, when you talk about singularity, I think can be seen as us human building machines that are smarter than us or more able than us. In that sense, we've already built many machines that are more able than us. And it is when machines start building machines that are even smarter that things might change. But that itself is only part of the evolution and how one part of this long stage of things, and not necessarily like the end of the start of a new age.
Yes, yes. We shouldn't think those films like The Matrix, where, you know, the end of the world is presaged by developments like this. Yeah.
そういうふうに考えるべきじゃないのかな。
そこは本当にその通りで、すべての生き物は自分の子孫を残すために戦って生き残ってきたので、この戦いの歴史が僕らに刻み込まれているので、何か新しい能力の高いものが来ると、また新たな生存戦争が起きるんじゃないかって僕らは恐れるんですけれども、ロボットや AI は自己生殖能力というか、その子孫を残す能力がないので、そこまで性に対する執着がないんですよね。で、性に対する執着がある人間が賢いものを見ると、同じように執着があるんじゃないかと思ってしまうんだけど、そもそも子孫を残せない時点でそこがないので、基本はロボットや AI というのは、もはやそれに与えられた使命を完遂する以外に、こう、別にパッションがないので、そこはだいぶ違うかな。
Your point exactly. So you got to understand that us humans, along with other animals, have survived many years up into this point. We have continued to reproduce and we have stayed here along with everyone else. On the other hand, robots doesn't have this eagerness to survive. So they don't have this drive to better themselves. And to when we look at things that move like us, we think, oh, they might be smarter than us, or they might really want to be stronger than us. But as long as they don't have this urge to survive, the urge to reproduce like we have, there's no way they're gonna go above us, just like how we have survived all these years.
Yeah, so we shouldn't assume that robots are as bad as us and have the kind of the ambitions that we have.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions coming in that we need to answer?
Doors in the back of the decor.
Okay.
For the LOVOT. But I've got another question for the designers. Can you program dreaming? Can you kind of write how dreams work for like AI bots? Just wondering.
夢というのは、まだ正確にその夢の存在理由は明確にはなってないものの、僕らが経験したことをシミュレーションして、この経験のバリエーションを作ると言われているんですよね。自分は1しか経験してないけど、そのバリエーションいくつか作ることによって学習を促進させる。
We're not clear as to why we dream or what makes us dream, but it is part of what we experience in real life, and it might be a variation of what we didn't experience in real life.
で、それによって学習を加速させるのが夢なので、学習を加速させる機能を入れたければ、僕ら夢を作らなきゃいけないんですね。
And it kind of helps us learn in situations where we didn't face in real life ourselves. And in that sense, I mean, we can make these dreams so that they can learn more quickly.
なので、そのステージになったら、夢を見させたい、見させたくないではなくて、見させる必要があるとは思っていますが、ラボットはまだそこまでの学習能力がないので、今は、あくまで寝てる間に、情報の整理をしているだけなので、夢にまでは至ってないです。
I think it will come to a point when we want Lavo to do that. Right now, at his rest, when it's sleeping, it's just rearranging and organizing the information inside their head. But soon we'll want to allow Lavo to dream so that it can experience things that it doesn't get to experience in its real life.
Sorry, I'm so distracted by them. Just hello. Do we have any more questions in the room, perhaps? Is there anything that anyone in the room has that they'd like to ask about?
The little door is in its form.
There's
Where they sleep or?
You mean the brown bit?
No,
発表会の時に、あそこからラボットが出てきたんですけど、でもなんかこう、僕たちそのラボットと暮らすための家具みたいなものがあっても面白いなっていうのはいつも言ってる。
So that hall itself was made for Lobot to come out when they do the presentation.
Okay.
We always wish we had more furnitures built around Lobot so that they can do the same thing in the home. Like just like come out, like that'd be really good. But that's what the hall is.
yes, the entrance onto the stage.
The entrance to the stage for little guys.
So, any other questions? Anybody in the room like to ask anything about what we've been discussing?
One final question going back to gender. There's another one, sorry. Let's go very briefly back to the gender question. Slightly different angle. So I wonder if the genderless nature of the LOVOT informs type of caring actions people show them. Do we care in a different way from males, females, or something genderless? From male buses to Klara.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
どうなんですかね。でも、その例えば、そのジェンダーの話に限らないんですけど、まあ、この子は角が生えて、で、角が生えてるっていうことに対して、みんなどう思うんですけど、まあ、結構それ、まあ、この子には角が生えてるもの、こういう生き物っていう感じで受け入れてくれることが多いんです。だから、ジェンダーがあるかないかっていうことも、この子にはあるかもしれないし、ないかもしれないし、でもそれはね、この子に角が生えてるっていうことと同じように、この子はこういう存在っていうふうに、特にちっちゃい子なんかは、素直に受け入れることが多い。
I mean, the fact that it's genderless is a bit like the fact that it has horn. So it's part of its identity. It's really part of what LOVOT is. And especially with younger kids, when they approach LOVOT, they just think this is the way it is. They don't really think about whether it's a boy or girl, but it's just the way that it looks, just like the horn itself.
Yeah.
Especially with little kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no real distinction because they don't really look at it as a particular gender.
Yeah. And I think that question about caring does, it carries over or maybe comes from the way that we might care differently or children, babies, you know, have expectations that little boys are going to be in a particular way. They're going to like rough play and climbing, and little girls are going to be more into talking and playing imaginative games. So, and I think those aren't essential. That's what we assume little boys and little girls are like. So it's probably really good that children are coming to these genderless robots going, I don't need to know whether it's going to like baseball or, you know, dolls, because it's just a creature.
And probably good for the more widespread notion of care to be a genderless one, right? Because there's so many problems with how, you know, little boys and little girls are raised, and the kind of auto-suggestion or the expectations, as you say, we place on them, where, you know, girls who speak out for themselves are called bossy, for example, right? And then boys are, you know, oh, you know, how whatever,
strong-willed.
Exactly. You know, there's these shades associated with the words that we use, right? So
yes. And again, the point with the LOVOT robots is because they're not biological, they don't have a sex, so you don't have to put a gender on top of that. So you're away from that complex biological world that can put people into kind of essentialist boxes, which say you're this, so be like this, you're that, be like that. Okay. So do we have any more questions? How are we doing for time? Right, we are at, okay. So I'm glad I asked that. One of them has gone, I think, to recharge, gone back to sleep. Another one has woken up, and Pumpkin is very happy on your knee. I can tell that they wanted to be there for most of the time. Thank you so much for the invitation to come here. Thank you so much for answering the questions. Thank you to the my other speakers. It's been absolutely brilliant. And thank you to everyone who's, you know, here in the room and who has been watching online and interacting with us. So thank you very much. I'd like, let's have a round of applause for everybody. Thank you.